Okay, let's move on. Previews. Here we go.
150 previews to do.
I know.
Boom.
Here we go. First one up. Rizin 42 going down May 6th at the Ariake Arena in Tokyo, Japan, headlined by a bantamweight bout between Yuki Motoya and former Rizin bantamweight champion Kai Asakura. Before we talk about a couple of fights from this Rizin card, any other fights you guys want to spotlight?
I will say real quick that Bukao is on this card, which I was unaware of until today. It is a kickboxing fight. It is not an MMA fight, but Bukao is like he's like Sanchai. He's like Super Lek. Like he's one of those names on that side of the world that is synonymous with superiority and winning and the tippy top of Muay Thai and kickboxing. So if you haven't had a chance to watch Bukao fight, I highly recommend it. The man is like a juggernaut. He hits just as hard as it looks like to hit him. So I definitely recommend watching that fight.
Okay. Let's start off.
I just wanted to share real quick
Yeah,
for Omar that the odds on that fight are actually very tight. Like
Is that true?
He's barely favored. So I don't know the other guy, but could be a good one.
Well, the only problem, I would wonder if the only issue with him with the odds is because it's kickboxing and not Muay Thai. So you're taking away the elbows, you're taking away like certain, sweeps and things like that. I don't think you can sweep and catch things in kickboxing the way you can in Muay Thai.
True.
So you're taking away quite a few elements from a person who learns Thai boxing in Thailand. Clinching and sweeping and things like that are quite fundamental. So I wonder if it does change the game a bit.
Makes sense.
Okay, first fight we are going to check out here in the flyweight division for Rizin. John Dodson, a familiar name, taking on Tatsuki Saomoto. I hope I'm not saying that too wrong. John Dodson, to MMA purists needing really no introduction, he is a UFC veteran, former standout on Tough, and let's see, 38 years old, 23-13 as a pro, 11 knockouts on his record, coming off of back-to-back wins at ex-MMA 4 back in last April a year ago, and most recently Rizin 40, Rizin versus Bellator, where he defeated Hideo Tokoro by knockout. He's taking on Tatsuki Saomoto, the 26-year-old out of Japan, 18-2 as a pro. What's so funny?
Nothing. We're having fun at your expense. Omar's muted.
I'm muted, that's why. I said I think it's Hideo Tokoro.
What?
Hideo?
Hideo.
Oh, the fight that Dodson won?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was laughing because I guess Omar didn't. He
did
wasn't
not know.
actually being as funny as I thought he was. I thought he was silently mouthing Hideo again and again.
No, I was muted.
Okay. You know what? All right. Mark, start us off. Give us your take between Dodson and Saomoto. If I'm saying
All right. Dodson is slightly favored, minus 130. Saomoto is plus 100, even money. Interesting matchup here. You have a kid in Saomoto who's on a 14-fight win streak. He's already 4-0 in Rizin, 18-2 overall. He's going to take on Dodson, who's looking for a bit of a late career resurgence here after debuting with the aforementioned KO of Hideo Tokoro on New Year's Eve. And I got to say, I like what I've seen from Dodson very recently. He has been letting his hands go again, and that's always been his biggest weapon. He kind of hit this point where he stopped letting them go, and his hand speed and his power for his size have always been stupid. So, like, that's his bread and butter. So I know he's 38. I know that's absurd for a flyweight, but I'm going to pick him here. As good as Saomoto has looked, I think Dodson's athleticism, even at 38, is still going to be on a level like Saomoto hasn't seen. So I will go with actually another John Dodson knockout, round 2 knockout.
Omar.
I'd have to agree. He's also had a couple of BKFC fights, for those of you who aren't aware. He's had a BKFC fight in 2022, and he had a BKFC fight a few months ago in February. Both of them were also round 1 knockouts because John Dodson has some of the fastest fucking hands ever. One of those wins, actually, for you guys is Ryan Benoit. Ryan Benoit tried his hand at BKFC and got completely smashed by John Dodson. So I don't think he did it again. but like Mark said, John Dodson's been letting his hands go both with and gloves on and gloves off. So I think he's been looking really good. The Saomoto has a great resume as far as his wins are concerned. The kid hasn't fucking lost since 2016 and has had quite a run since then. But these for me are not. I don't know anybody really, so it's hard to really get a gauge as to how good he is and how talented he is based on the compared to somebody who's had the experience and had the test of will that we know that John Dodson has. So I'm going to go with John Dodson. I can't imagine that the hand speed is going to be slower than Saomoto. I think Saomoto will be at a disadvantage there. And I think if John Dodson throws those hands, throws them as fast as he can, I think he lands and I think he puts him out. Round 1, KO.
Yeah, to be quite transparent, I honestly just don't know these Japanese fighters out of Rizin well enough to give any kind of confident pick. So I'm going to roll with my man, John the Magician Dodson. I'm going to say knockout round 1. Why not? Okay, let's see. In the lightweight division here, we have Roberto de Souza taking on Spike Carlyle. So de Souza most recently appeared in Rizin versus Bellator in a losing effort against AJ McKee. He's the 33-year-old out of Brazil, out of Sao Paulo, 14-2 as a professional with 10 submission victories on his record. That loss to AJ McKee snapped a 5-fight win streak, all under the Rizin banner. He's taking on Spike, the Crucifixion Carlyle, the 29-year-old out of San Diego, California. 14 wins, 4 defeats. Of his 14 victories, only 1 has gone the distance. Most recently, he also lost at the hands of AJ McKee at Bellator 286 back in last October. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take of Carlyle versus de Souza.
I think this is a great fight. De Souza had a great performance against AJ McKee in that New Year's card. I think he gave AJ McKee all he could really take, to be quite honest with you. That fight was very, very close. I think it was very taxing on AJ McKee, and I think we saw AJ McKee, really, really work for that win. The one thing I think is very interesting about de Souza is that I think he's someone who can keep Spike Carlyle's cardio and his forward pressure, I think, are what set him apart quite differently from everybody else. I think that's really where his bread and butter is and what makes people uncomfortable in the cage with him. And I just have a feeling that de Souza is not going to have a problem trying to crash that distance. I don't think he'll mind trying to take the fight to the ground or staying in close and trying to work his jiu-jitsu if it comes down to it. But the nice thing I like about de Souza is as much as he can rely on his jiu-jitsu, he can strike too. I really enjoyed his striking in that AJ McKee fight. It's not his bread and butter, but it is effective enough that he's able to defend himself with his striking and then try to implement a game from there. And while he was unable to really do that against AJ McKee successfully as an overall thing, I think he'll have a better opportunity to do it against Spike Carlyle. I will be going with de Souza by unanimous decision.
Okay, Mark.
So de Souza is a decent favorite. He's minus 325. Spike is plus 250. Interesting bout here. De Souza, as you said, coming off the high-profile loss to McKee, competitive fight. He's going to have a 3-inch height advantage on Spike. It's funny that Spike's coming off against a loss to the same guy. This, to me, is a fight that de Souza has to win. Like, if he wants to be looked at as an elite lightweight on the world stage, you can't lose to Spike Carlyle. And I know he's kind of already looked at as an elite lightweight, but Spike is a guy people know. He was in the UFC, he was into Bellator. You got to get this win. And it is an interesting challenge. Spike is big. He's strong. He's an athletic dude. He's not easy to control at all, which is obviously what de Souza is looking to do. He can catch you with a weird shot if you're off your game for a moment. We saw that with AJ in a couple moments there. It's no walk in the park fighting Spike. But, if de Souza is on the level that he has appeared to be, then he wins this fight. He's capable on the feet. I don't think he's outgunned there. And he is an absolute wizard on the mat, and I think Spike is probably a bit too reckless to not get caught in some bad positions, maybe not get caught in terms of being tapped. He's a very hard man to tap. He's never been finished in his life. So I'll say that he can survive in that regard, but I think De Souza can get enough done in the grappling and threaten enough to win a clear UD.
Yeah, to survive, I think fights, and when I say survive, going the distance with guys like Bill Algeo, Billy Q, and AJ McKee. As good as De Souza is, and I think as elite as his submission game is, I don't see him closing out that fight.
This is a case of the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Spike Carlyle never been finished. Roberto De Souza only has won by finish. Of his 14 victories, none of them have been by decision.
Wow. Interesting.
4 knockouts, 10 subs. So many first-round finishes for De Souza. Spike Carlyle does have 4 defeats. But I got to roll with De Souza here. I think he's just going to be the more talented fighter overall. In terms of who will win out, the immovable object or the unstoppable force, I will say that this will be Spike Carlyle's this will be De Souza's first win by decision. I'm going to give him a unanimous decision. I'll say 30-26. Okay, moving on to the bantamweights here for Rizin. Naoki Inoue taking on Juan Archuleta, a familiar name. Inoue, the 25-year-old out of Japan, 16-3 as a pro, 9 submission victories. He himself has never been finished, coming off of a win last December. He will be standing across from the Bellator veteran, Juan the Spaniard Archuleta, the 35-year-old out of California, 27-4 as a pro with 11 knockouts to his name. Omar, start us off. Give us your take of Inoue versus Archuleta.
Yeah, so it looks like Inoue fights out of Longo Weidman MMA, which I think is interesting. I did not know that he was affiliated there, or according to Tapology anyway. So that's an interesting little tidbit there, especially when you consider what that team kind of considers their bread and butter. The reality is Juan Archuleta is a tough out any day of the week for anybody. Juan Archuleta is a fantastically well-rounded fighter. Fantastic ground game. His strikes are generally on point. Very, very heavy-handed when he actually lands something on you. And the dude doesn't go away, man. He's a very, very tough guy to put out and a very tough guy to win against. I think Inoue is going to have his hands full in this fight. He's very, very good. He has a solid amount of wins. But just looking at the loss against Matt Schnell, although it was a few years ago, as good as we know Matt Schnell is, I do think that Juan Archuleta is a better fighter than Matt Schnell, and I can't imagine him losing or Archuleta losing this fight. So I'm going to go with Archuleta by unanimous decision.
Okay, Mar?
So Archuleta's about a 2-1 favorite. He's minus 210. Inoue is plus 170 as the dog. I can't believe that he is still 25 years old. When you said that, I had to look it up. I was thinking you were wrong. So he was like 20, that means, when he was in the UFC, which is wild. But yeah, this is a cool fight. I kind of forgot that Archuleta had asked to stay over and take some fights in Rizin. So good for him that he's getting this to happen. He will be a bit smaller, 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach on the side of Inoue. Inoue 16-3 in his career. He was only 1-1 in his little brief UFC stint about 5 years ago, where he did drop a split decision to Matt Schnell, as Omar mentioned. He's rattled off 7 out of 8 since then. His only loss is to Hiromasu Agikubo, which is the man we just saw Kyoji Horiguchi beat on New Year's Eve. He's good, but kind of same way Omar alluded to, as good as he is, I think Juan Archuleta is very good. He has only lost to the elite of the elite, Pitbull, Sergio Pettis, Rafion Stotts. He's a really well-rounded fighter. He's stronger than Inoue. I think his wrestling's going to be a factor here that he can lean on. Inoue's slick with the subs, but Archuleta has been tapped once in his life, and it was almost a decade ago, so I don't think that's a huge concern. So this is kind of similar to the Dodson pick for me. I think the athleticism, the power, and the overall well-roundedness of Archuleta's game is just going to end up being too much here. So I will also take Archuleta by UD.
We are unanimous in our unanimous pick of Juan Archuleta. I think he is the more experienced fighter here, obviously. And I think that experience is going to shine through, and I'm going to see him getting also the unanimous decision over Inoue. Okay, main event for Rizin here. It is Japan versus Japan. we have Kai Asakura taking on Yuki Motoya. I hope I'm not saying that too wrong. Asakura, the 29-year-old out of Japan, 19-4 as a pro, 11 knockouts, coming off a loss from last December. December of 21. Yuki Motoya, the 33-year-old, also out of Japan, 33 wins, 9 defeats with 1 no contest. He's riding a 5-fight win streak coming into this weekend, and he has 12 submission victories to his name. Mark, start us off.
All right, so this is pretty close odds. Kai Asakura is the favorite. He's minus 175. Yuki Motoya is plus 145 as the dog. They're basically the same size. Yuki, let's try that again. Yuki Motoya is a dude who is 43 fights into his career at this point, at only 33 years old. He has been around for a minute. He's fought a who's who of guys. If you look down his resume, you'll see plenty of names that you recognize. Inoue, who we just spoke of, Patchy Mix, Oigi Kubo, Victor Henry, Justin Scoggins, Horiguchi, Alan Nascimento, list goes on. He's fought a lot of dudes. He's had his ups and downs, obviously more wins than losses. And he's on a nice streak right now. He just had a huge knockout of formerly top 10 ranked Rogerio Bontorin, who he knocked out with a big knee. And he's getting a big chance here against Kai Asakura. Kai has been the champ in the past. He had, if I remember, he had dropped the belt because he was dropping down to flyweight. We're back up at bantamweight here. The reason his name is known to most Americans is because he's the man who knocked out Kyoji Horiguchi back in 2019. Of course, Kyoji then got his revenge in the rematch and knocked him out. Kai also has a 1-on-1 series with Manel Kopp. Like, he's very legit. He's a dangerous dude. He's a dangerous finisher. He did lose his last fight to Oigi Kubo, which I don't love. I mean, he's solid, but he's not my favorite. But I still kind of tend to think Asakura is the better fighter here. Motoya is a dangerous dude. As I said, super experienced, but I think he may just be a level under what Asakura is. So I will say Asakura gets it done by decision.
Omar.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I'm not going to harp on a lot of the same things that Mark talked about because I do have a lot of the same points, especially when we talk about the value of his resume and kind of the quality of the wins that he has on here and the rivalries that he has. I mean, not a ton of people go 1-1 with Kyoji Horiguchi. Nobody wants to fucking fight Manel Kopp, and he's fought him twice. So you got to respect it. And Kai has been around for quite a minute too. You know what I mean? We talk about Yuki having a lot of fights and having a long resume as well, but Kai's been fighting since 2012, it looks like, as far as his professional career is concerned. Somehow went professional, then went back to amateur, it looks like, and then went back to professional. But either way, he's been inside of that cage fighting in front of people for over a decade now. So he's, I don't think the experience is going to play, as far as time is concerned in the sport, a big factor at all. I think that Kai has probably gotten a better handle on the type of competition you're looking for when we get to the high levels of MMA. And I think he's going to walk away with it, man. I don't think he's going to be able to put him away either, so I'm going to go with Asakura by decision.
Again, admittedly, I don't know a ton about the Japanese fighters, so I will roll with a guy who is on the tear here and who recently finished Rogerio Bontorin. I will go with Yuki Motoya. I will say he's going to get the submission victory, and I will say round number 3.
Dude, if fucking Mike gets this fucking pick.
We couldn't be unanimous on the whole card. Someone needed to shake it up.
I'm going to lose it. These like I'm going to put 15 grand on fucking Snake Eyes here, and then he hits it is absolutely insane to me.
No. Come on, bro.